Hello everyone, welcome to my channel AQ Space. Now that we have learned about the format and the syntax of the for loops in our previous lecture, we move one step forward here in this lecture and talk about the nested for loops. Nested for loops means those for loops which are used one within another. And there are a few scenarios when only the use of one for loop is not enough. Sometimes you need to run another loop within one loop to carry out a process. So let's move on with the example first. The basic example from everyday life regarding the for loops is that of a clock. And when we think about the clock, think about it as a way as the clock has three hands: the minute hand, the hour hand, and the second hand. The hour hand moves depending upon the minute hand when it has completed the whole 360 circle, and the minute hand depends upon the second hand when it has completed the 360 circle. So one way or the other, one of the hand is dependent upon the other, basic being the second, and then the minute hand, and then the hour hand. In this way, the for loops work, one within another, in which one inner loop is dependent upon the outer loop. Moving forward with the example from a program. A patient has to take his medication thrice a day for 1 week. Create a program to remind him of his medication timely. Now, how to decide which one would be the outer loop and which one would be the inner loop? Now, they are saying that the patient has to take the medication for 1 week, but within 1 week, it has to take it thrice a day. That means the outer loop would be that of the weeks, that of the days within the week, yani 7 days in a week, and the number of medications, that is number 1, 2, 3 of the medications would be termed as the inner loop. So we start off with start for day 1 to 7, because in a week we have 7 days, so obviously it is going to run for every day in 1 week. And then the inner loop would run for 3 days, because within a day also it needs to remind the patient 3 times. And then it goes writing medication time, means for day 1 it will move on to the part 1, mention the medication time, and then part 1 would be incremented. It becomes 2. So on the second part of the day it would again write medication time, and it will get incremented to 3. When it reaches 3, it will again check, yes, 3 is within the limits. So it is again going to remind him of the medication time, increment it to 4. But this time, since it is not a part of the condition in the inner for loop, so it looks for the end for loop and it comes out of the inner loop. Hence, it moves on to the next step, which is day 2. It has implemented day 1 to day 2 now, and it looks forward for the condition, yes, 2 is within the limits for days. And again, it goes to the inner loop for part, as executed 3 times. When after executing it 3 times, it exits this loop, it comes out, increments the day 2 to day 3, and so on until day 7 is there. After day 7, when it gets incremented to day 8, obviously it is not a part of the condition, so it will look for the end for of that loop, and it will come out of the outer loop as well and exit the program. Now moving on to the execution of the flowchart, start, then setting the day to 1 and part to 1, that is the values to 1 and part values to 1, then it will carry out the decision if day is lesser than equal to 7. Yes, it is lesser than equal to 7 because initially it is 1, so it will move on. If it is a no, obviously it will exit, but if it is a yes, then it will move on to the next step, that is checking whether what is the value of the part. Initially it is part 1. If it wasn't a part 1, then it would have gone to no, but since it is a part of part 1, so it will execute write medicine time, and after writing it down, then it will increment the variable part. Whereas if the part does not obey the condition that is stated in the decision, obviously, Then it will move on to the no statement, and no will help it to increment the day, the outer loop variable, to 1. And after incrementing it to 1, obviously it is a loop. So for part 1, it is going to go back to the part loop, and for the day, it is going back to the decision statement to make the outer loop. So in this way, the inner loop and outer loop are executed. Coding this program in C, we are going to first use a for loop within the int. So we are going to use the integer data type of day is equals to 1 semicolon, day is less than equal to 7 semicolon, day plus plus. This will serve as the outer loop. Open and close it by parenthesis, and within these parentheses we are going to write down the inner loop, which is going to be int part is equals to 1 semicolon, part should be lesser than equal to 3, and part plus plus. So within this loop, the inner loop, again we are going to open and close it by parentheses, and we are going to incorporate printf statement in which we are going to write medicine time %t, which will tell us which part is actually which part of the medicine it is going to time it here. So it is going to write it like medicine time 1, medicine time 2, medicine time 3, and after 3 obviously it is going to be come out of the inner loop. So this is terminated by the semicolon. Once one day and all parts are completed, then we want it to move on to the next line and to print the next 3 medications on the next line for the next day. So we are going to write day %d, and here it is going to write day, means which day it is now, which it is going to remind for the next 3 times a day. And then by first I wanted to move on to the next line, so I'm going to write it printf, move it to the next line. Let's see how it gets executed. So it says day 1 medicine time 1, medicine time 2, medicine time 3, day 2 medicine time 2, but we need a little space here. So all we need to do is we need to incorporate some space here so that it's easier for us to read it even. Now we run it again so that we know it's readable enough. Yes, it's readable enough now. So we start off from day 1 medicine 1 2 3, day 2 medicine 1 2 3, and so on till day 7. It is going to give us the output. The second example that we will discuss here is basically that of the dependent variables in the nested for loops. So for that, the example that we have taken is that of creating a pyramid of sterics. But before starting off with making the algorithm, let's declare the concept that a pyramid we are talking about is like this. Sorry, or it is like this. So to create this pyramid, we first need to clarify the concept of rows and columns. The row is this. These are the rows. Row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. And the columns here are like this. Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. So when we talk about the first row, and obviously when we need to make the pyramid of stars, that means first row will have the star only in the first row and the first column. For the second row, the stars would be uh, 2 stars, so that we progress a little further. So second row will work till second column, whereas third row will make up the stars till third column, and so on. So gaining the concept here, we now see that as the number of rows are progressing, so are the number of columns every time. So now that we are clear about the concept of pyramids and how to make up the sterics, we move on to forming the algorithm. We start off with start. The outer loop will be the row, which is from 1 to 7, and the inner loop will be from column, which is to be from 1 to the value of the row, whatever the row or in the outer loop value is. And every time it is going to start running from column 1 until the value of that particular row for which loop we are within it, we are working within it. And for that value, it is going to write the number of sterics. Every time it is going to increment the inner loop until it reaches the limit, which is the limit of the row value for that particular inner loop. Only then it will come out of that inner loop and will move on to the incrementing of the outer loop, will implement the outer loop again and move within the inner loop again. So this is going to be the value. For example, if we are moving to row 3, it will move on to the inner loop. Now the column will start from 1, and on 1 it will write down the steric, increment it to 2. Again, 2 is within the range, so it will insert a steric in the second column, increment it to 3. Again, this time, since the row value was 3 when we moved in the inner loop, that means the inner loop is going to run till the value of 3. On the third column, it is again going to insert the steric. We'll increment it to 4, but this time it is not obeying the condition in the inner loop, so it comes out of the inner loop. Increment the outer loop to 4. We'll see if row value condition is within 4. Yes, it is. The value 4 is satisfying the condition. This time the inner loop will run from 1 to 4. That means this time it is going to insert the sterics till the fourth column. So fourth row will have 4 columns. Previously third row had 3 columns and 3 stars. In this way it is going to run until we have 7 rows and 7 columns in the final row, and then it will exit both the loops and will come out of the program. Talking about the flowchart start, it is going to set the value of the row and the column, decide the outer loop, give decision. If it is a no, then obviously it will exit, but if it is a yes, then it will move to the inner loop. Inner loop will go on writing the steric as long as it is satisfying the condition after implementing the column value every time. But as soon as it does not satisfy the condition, the decision will move on to the no statement, in which it is going to increment the outer loop, and hence in this way it is going to go back to the decision of the loop. So in this way the nested for loop is going to be made, the inner loop obeying the decision of the columns and the outer loop obeying the decision for the rows. Let's create it in the for loop. So without wasting any time, we are directly going to start from the for loop. Int row, which will start from 1 semicolon, and it will move on till row value is 7. You can, if the number of values of rows are not specified, you can use it as per your own choice. We increment it, then we move on to the inner for loop, that is for the columns. We are going to write int column is equals to 1. It will run till the column value is less than equal to the row value, and column is plus plus. So once within the inner loop, we are going to print f the star. We will come out of the inner loop, insert a new line for the next row, semicolon. Let's execute this program and see if it's running fine. And yes, you can see that a pyramid is created in the output. I hope you understand the topic of the nested for loops and the dependent variables used in the for loops in some cases. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video